A huge win by CF Montreal in front of a sellout crowd versus Inter Miami on Saturday night. A goal by Chinoso Ofor, a game that could have gone the other way, but Jonathan Sirois made a big difference in that game. A substitution that wasn't digested well by one of the young players on the team, and a couple of players showed up at practice today. We'll talk about all that and more. I'm Marinaro. It's a sick podcast, CF Montreal Talk. Jeremy Filosa of 98.5 and MFC Radio joins me. He's coming up.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. CF Montreal Talk.
Here's the chance. They've got the goal. Absolutely incredible. Cameron Porter delivers the goal to send Montreal Impact into the CONCACAF Champions League semi-final.
The sickest CF Montreal podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And here we are. I'm Marinaro. It's a sick podcast, CF Montreal Talk. A huge win by CF Montreal by a score of 1-0 on a goal by Chinoso Ofor, who was celebrating his birthday. No better way to celebrate that. No better way for me to celebrate talking soccer, talking football with Jeremy Filosa of 98.5 and EMFC Radio. What's going on?
It's going well, Tony. How about you?
It's going extremely well. It was a couple of days ago that we had a podcast and we showed pockets of the stadium that were empty, and we talked about how much it hurt our hearts. Yep. Well, we were very content on Saturday night in front of a sellout. I believe it was 19,619. The number could be off, but it was a sellout on a beautiful Saturday night in Montreal, Jeremy. Ça fait du bien.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was fantastic, honestly, and there was a big show right outside the stadium with Fuego, and Montreal had their Latino night going, so it was it worked out very, very well for both events, and I think both events were able to help each other out, and it was fantastic. I hope they do this more often because, you know, if you're a player from Miami and you're coming here playing in this ambiance here, you're like, wow, it's fantastic to play here. The stadium was full early. A lot of people was very, was very active in the stadium, and throughout the whole game, the fan base was outstanding. I wish we could repeat that game in and game out. But, yeah, what a clash between Wednesday night's game and Saturday night's game.
We do know, we saw it last year. Once again, I think that you were a sellout for the last 6 or 7 games of the regular season, that when they win games, they do sell out. Or when they have a star player, sometimes they do sell out. All depends. Drogba's first year, they did. His second year, not as much. But anyway, let's get to the starting lineup. And here you have it. Jonathan Sirois was in goal with a 3-man back line of Campbell with Waterman to his right and Corbeau to his left. In front of the back line, 2 CDMs, Mathieu Chouanière and Victor Wanyama. Aaron Herrera was right wing back. Lapalainen, left wing back. He was back there. And Duke was in behind Ibrahim and Ofer. So a 3-4-1-2. 4 in with on the bench, if we can, James Pantemis, Rudy Camacho, Thorkelson, ZBG, Lassiter, Hamdi, Rhea, Vilsaint, and Saliba. Very quickly, let's take a look at Inter Miami's starting 11 for the game. All right, so calendar, a back line of Miller and Kryvtsov on center back with Yedlin and Negri at the fullback position. Frey and Arroyo right in front of them. And it was Kremaski with Jean to his right and Taylor to his left, and then Campagna was up top. It was a 4-2-3-1 for them. Jeremy, I want to go back and I want to show you CF Montreal starting lineup again for 1 second, and you'll notice that Matko Miljevic wasn't dressed for this game.
Yeah, so I asked the coach actually this morning about Matko because healthy scratch for the second time in 10 days. This is not normal. I mean, the coach told us this morning that is simply part of the rotations, but this doesn't make sense. I mean, this is a guy that the organization told us was the replacement to Georgi Mihailovic. Now, when he went down during camp, we said, you know, how big of a loss this was for the team not to be able to count on this guy. Now he's back from injury. You would think that you would start building on this with this guy, right? And instead, you know, he's skipping games here and there. There's obviously something going on there. They're obviously not satisfied with something. They clearly don't want to tell us. But the reason why he's not in the lineup is, there's something else than the sporting side. There's something else than injuries, because from what we hear, he's fit. He's ready to go.
Yeah.
He did not impress on Wednesday when he played against Hamilton for those first 45 minutes. So this is a head scratcher, Tony, definitely.
All right. There's one or two things that I can tell you. Matko has what we call and I don't know if it's got anything to do with anything, okay? He has a very hot character, all right? When things don't go his way in practice, he lets his frustrations be known. And on a couple of occasions, and it happened once last year that I know of for sure, that he let his frustrations be known to a player who megged him, okay? And the same thing happened, I think, a couple of weeks ago, 10 days or so ago, with Hamdi in practice. I don't know if you heard the same thing.
I didn't hear any names specifically, but I heard that there were, as we say in French, des accrochages.
Yes.
And for Lozada for him to go to the point of saying, you know what, you're not going to dress, it's because it's something that maybe is recurrent. They've talked to him about it maybe once or twice. I don't know. But it's a problem, Tony, because in this moment, in this period of time where you got all these games, one after the other, to have a guy like that not even dressed, it's a problem. It's a problem. This is not a young player. I mean, he is a young player, but I'm saying he's not a young player in development like other guys that we, on occasion,
So like dressed. I said, I mean, last year I heard from several players that when things don't go his way in practice, il est pas très agréable, all right? And he lets his frustrations be known on his teammates. And I heard the same thing happened with Hamdi, give or take 10 days or 2 weeks ago. Now, that accrochage that you were talking about, that you were told about, that's what it was. Supposedly, Hamdi wasn't very happy about it. The teammates weren't very happy about it either. He let Matko know about it, and they needed to be separated. I don't know how severe or not it was, and maybe it's got nothing to do with anything because he played in the Canadian Championship, so it's not like he was being punished. But he did not play very well in the Canadian Championship. I said last podcast, I see something in this player. I'm going to say it again. I still do. I know a lot of people disagree with me, and that's okay. At the end, I'm either going to be right or I'm either going to be wrong. I mean, it's not going to go either. It's one way or the other. But we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, he was not in the lineup, so we'll continue to monitor that situation. All right, okay. Chinoso 04 was in the lineup, and it was his birthday, and he got the only goal of the game on a very, very good pass by Ariel Lassiter, who basically down the left side, Jeremy, put a hard pass to the net, which the keeper didn't get to, went by the keeper, and Ofer came sliding in and basically redirected it into an empty net. Good for him. Good for Lassiter. Lassiter and Duke going up against their former team. They wanted to impress. And clearly on that play, Lassiter did. Yeah,
and Lassiter told us today, but he understands that at this moment, they need to have certain rotations. And the reality is he's been the key player, key field player, I should say, in the last two wins. Against Hamilton, he's the one who scores the goal by cutting into the middle of the field and taking that shot. And then he gives the center on the game-winning goal on Saturday. So he's had a direct impact on these last two wins, and I'm sure the coach is really happy with him. But as he explained to us this morning, you really have to manage this guy because you got to go up and down the field. He's not really used to playing that wing-back position. And now you always have to keep in the back of your head that you want him fresh on Wednesday against Vancouver in that final, right? So that means that right now you can't be using him 90 minutes. So that's probably the reason why we give him 45 minutes at a time. Lapalainen was sick on Saturday, told the coach he had a good 45 minutes to give. He gave the first 45, then came off. So there's a lot of gestion, for the word right now, that the coach needs to have in order to see who's playing, who's not, who's getting minutes. Hamdi got some minutes. And coach told us this morning he really liked what he saw. I agree with him.
Bench management might be the term you're looking for. Bench management,
Yeah, exactly. So there are 3 games coming up. We'll talk about them in a couple of seconds. But 3 games in 8 days, and you always have to keep in the back of your head, that final against Vancouver 8 days from now, that you got to make sure that you got your best 11 players to start that game in order to give yourself a chance to beat Vancouver.
Yeah, the only I'm going to sound like a broken record here because it seems like if I'm not talking about Jules Anthonyville saying nobody else in the city is, but I thought it was unfortunate that he was the only real striker on the bench, and he didn't get in any minutes.
Right.
At the same time, and Ofer played the whole game, so you could have managed it over there. At the same time,
he was finished by the end of the game. By the way,
yeah, he absolutely was. At the same time, it's going to be very difficult for me to be critical of Hernan Losada here in any way, shape, or form, because his job is to win soccer games, and it was mission accomplished on Saturday night. He won. And one guy who wasn't happy with him was Sean Rea, Jeremy, who was subbed into the game at the 71st minute, replacing Sanusi Ibrahim. And at the 94th minute in stoppage time, what you're supposed to do is make changes, A, to try and take time off the clock, B, to try and slow down everything and try and just kill any kind of momentum, and C, when you're protecting a lead, to bring in a more defensive player. And Losada did that by bringing in Robert Thorkelson. So hats off to Losada. Great move to make that change. But when he calls Rea to come to the bench, Rea looks at him like almost in shock, as if he can't be calling me. I came on at the 71st minute. He's not calling me to come off at the 94th. And there was a little bit of confusion. He hesitated to come off to the point where the ref thought he was intentionally wasting time, and he yellow carded him. Now, let's take a look at a couple of images of Rea coming off, looks at the coach and says, what's going on? What do you mean? And then passes by. The coach is talking to him, but he just doesn't say anything and just walks away, makes his way to the bench. You could tell he was disappointed.
Yeah, no, he's disappointed. But the listen, a lot of things to say right there. First of all, I didn't think Rea was necessarily the right move, the right guy to bring in at that point in time. But at the same time, right before Losada pulls him out, I'm talking to Gavino on the press box, and I'm saying to myself, he's not giving what the team needs. I don't know what he's doing right now on the field. And just a couple of seconds later, he's out of the game. I have to agree with Losada that it was the right move. And the reality is, Thorkelson came in and even blocked the scoring chance at the very end. So he had, he came in and was useful for the team, but he had no other choice. And, there were still about 3 minutes left to play in stoppage time. Anything could have happened. I understand Rea, who's thinking to himself, it can't be me because I just came in, and I can understand the confusion with the referee. I can also understand, the official saying, you deserve a yellow card and everything. I talked to it a little bit about with Losada this morning. He said that at that point in time, he just felt like he needed to make a change because the situation was critical. Montreal's net was getting bombarded at that time, at that moment. So, hey, you do what you need to do to get 3 points.
Yes, you're right about that.
And that's what they did. I'm sure Rea.
I will disagree with you. I will disagree with you on one thing.
Yeah.
Your comment of there was no other choice. There were plenty of other choices. So number one, okay, let's just discuss it just to play devil's advocate a little bit here. Okay. Number one, you could have removed Chinoso Ofor, who had absolutely nothing left. Okay. And you could have put Rea up top if you wanted to. I know it's a completely different profile. I get it. But all you're going to ask for your player at that point is probably to press, to try and maybe get the ball, or bring the ball to the flag, try and waste time if you get the ball, or if you don't have the ball, come back and help your team. So that's number one. Number two, you could have put Rea in Lassiter's position and asked Lassiter to go and play up top in Ofer's position. All right. If you would have taken out Ofer again, you could have made that kind of change.
So you're talking about Rea's insertion in the game, not his...
No, I'm talking about Rea coming out.
Okay.
So when I'm saying, instead of taking out Rea, you could have taken out Ofer and put Rea up top, or you could have taken out Ofer, put Lassiter up top, and Rea in Lassiter's spot, or you could have replaced Hamdi with Rea, because Hamdi came in and he had 25 minutes in his legs more than Rea did. He came in at the 45th, right?
Honestly,
46th.
Tony, the only thing I care about is that the two individuals sit down, talk about what happened, put it behind them, and move forward. Because the last thing we want right now is Rhea to end up in the doghouse, not dress on Wednesday
You're right
or
about
whatever
that.
it is. So I just hope they can put it behind them. I mean, Rhea usually is gives you what he has to give. This was not his best night. Okay, so let's move on, and we got the 3 points. But again, Tony, I mean, listen,
he's a young man. He's 21 years old.
Exactly.
He's playing in front of family and friends. There's probably 20 people there that are just to see him. And pride kicks in, a little bit of ego kicks in. You're not happy, of course. But I'll say this though. I see both sides to this, which is rare that I see both sides, because I either see one side or the other. I see both sides. At the end of the day, if this would have backfired, and Miami ends up tying the game for whatever reason, they won the game. CF Montreal did. So you know what? Lassiter was right in that respect. Rhea, I'm happy he was upset in a way, because you don't want to see a player coming off and actually be smiling and all happy. But it's a learning moment. I believe for a young player, because put it this way, Rhea's a good kid. Okay. He's a good kid. Always has been. And I'm sure he always will be. The body language, though, it doesn't look good. You know what I mean? If you don't know the kid, and I know the kid, and I know he's a good kid from a good family, and he was raised the right way and all that stuff. So I know him. There's no problem. There's no attitude there from that kid. The kid he's got a little chip on his shoulder, but he's a confident kid. He's a good kid. Yeah. But for those who don't know him, they could be watching that and they could be saying, look a little bit of entitlement, a young kid, spoiled. It's not like that. But the body, look, I can understand if you're looking at it and you say, I didn't like the body language. But you're right. What's important is that they have a talk, because the kid can't go in the doghouse for this.
Exactly. So, I mean, we don't want this to hover over anybody's head. We want to move forward. And I'm sure that they both know and understand that. And let's hope that that's what happens. But just to get back to the game, I thought Montreal was a little bit, I wouldn't say lucky, Tony, but, the chips fell, where Montreal needed them to fall for them to win this game. Not too many quality scoring chances. 0-4 gets one at the back of the net. Miami had many chances at the end of the game. Hit the crossbar, hit the post. Diving stop by Waterman in front of an open net. So they escaped a situation that could have been very unfortunate, dropping a win here in Montreal. But at the same time, you take the 3 points and you move forward.
Jeremy, I think Inter Miami had the ball 59% of the game. I think the shots on target were actually 5-2 for Miami. And I'll say this. Yeah. I don't believe CF Montreal stole the game. They did not steal the game, but it obviously could have went the other way. I mean, the better scoring chances were courtesy of Inter Miami. They could have, but Jonathan Sirois is part of the team. Make that 4 straight starts at home in MLS action with clean sheets. Some people were worried about this guy early on when he had to take over for Pantemis, who went down with an injury in game number 1. You don't have to be worried about any longer. And Jeremy, it's going to be really hard to dislodge him from his net.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always prefer a coach that finds the way to keep both his keepers active, because I think that's the smart thing to do, especially with 2 young keepers. I don't know if we could still call Pantemis a young keeper, but just to say, it's not as if you came into the season with a superstar keeper and a backup. So I like it when a coach keeps both his keepers active. But at this point in time, Lassiter, the only thing he's thinking about is picking up points. And he's got one man back there right now who's making all the stops, making all the right moves, breaking club records. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a very tough situation for Pantemis right now. And I'm sure he's extremely frustrated about what's going on. But at the same time, as 5 wins in 7 games in this stretch of games here. And we got 4 more to go now.
One of the most unfortunate things about sport is injuries. And obviously they're a setback. And one of the probably nicest things about sport is that there's windows of opportunities for players. And for some players, they come early. For some players, they come after a while. For some players, maybe they come late. For some players, they don't come. But if the opportunity comes, and it came calling for Jonathan Sirois, at that point, it's up to you to seize that opportunity and make the best of it. And he has. And, I have to tell you, I like both these keepers, both really, really good people. But Jonathan Sirois is an extremely hardworking young man. I've had a chance to see him work hard for many, many years. And you know what? He paid his dues, and good for him. Good for him.
Yeah,
all right. So
definitely.
now, so big win, 1-0. They're back in a playoff spot, holding on to the 9th and final position in the East. And
Yes.
you were at practice earlier
Yep.
today, and we have some images here of, is that Mason Toye? There you have it, Mason Toye. Okay.
Yes, Mason Toye today practiced with the subs, so we can take a quick look and see what. So it's nice to see Mason Toye back on the field, training. So just to explain the way that Lozada has the practices set up right now. I'm not sure if you're hearing
I
me
do.
well.
Yeah.
Are you hearing me? Yeah. Okay. So Lozada, the way he's got it set up is the players that start the last game, all they're doing is stretching. Okay, so that's all they're doing. They don't not even touching the ball. The substitutes are the players who didn't play or on another field and they're practicing. So he was part of that group. I asked Lozada the question this morning, and he told us it would still Toye would still needs a little bit of time. I think he's going to come back after the international break. So for these upcoming games here, he's probably not going to be there. Okay. But he should be back after that. That's the good news. I don't know if you have the images of Piet also.
I do not.
No, okay.
Go ahead.
So Piet is jogging today. That's a good sign. And if everything goes well, a return to play also for him around, I would say, June 21st, more or less.
All right. Okay. Fantastic stuff. All right. Okay. So good news. Next up, the schedule. They travel tomorrow.
Yeah, so this is what they're going to do. So they're going to D.C. Tomorrow. They're going to stay in D.C. after the game, travel directly to Philadelphia for Saturday night's game.
Smart move.
Right. After Saturday night's game, they will fly right back to Montreal because the airport is, it's pretty close to the stadium. They'll be home late on Saturday night, but that shouldn't be a problem. They'll have Sunday to rest. Monday will be a regen. And they'll probably leave for Vancouver on Monday or Tuesday. I'm not sure yet. But, I spoke to Lozada about this week coming up, these 3 games in 8 days that are coming up right now, concluding with the Canadian Championship final. And when I asked Lozada about which game would be the game where you probably have the most rotation, and that's probably going to be Philadelphia. So, I expect them to go in with a semi-regular lineup on Wednesday night in DC, but in Philly on Saturday night, Tony, I think that's where we're going to see the most rotations because we want to make sure that we have most starters ready to go and play as many minutes as possible in BC next week for the Canadian Championship final. That's going to be something else. I'll be able to break that down for you guys very specifically because I've done a lot of play-by-play games on Apple TV for Vancouver, so I know that team very, very well. But you can understand that I'm not saying they're going to forfeit the game against Philly on Saturday night, Tony, but I think that's the one you got to identify in order to, give some guys some rest, the way they should have done against Cincinnati a few weeks back.
Yeah, Jeremy, you would think that the players that are not going to make the trip to D.C., obviously will not make the trip to Philadelphia either because the players they're bringing in D.C.
But I think I think they're going to travel almost everybody because they're not coming back to Montreal between games, right? So you might have certain guys flying but not dressing, but I think the whole group is going to travel because they're going to practice, after they're going to stay in DC for Thursday's practice, Friday's practice, etc.
Yeah, I would think there's going to be some who are going to stay behind because the reserves have CS Saint Laurent on this next week.
Okay.
And you're going to want to play Saint Laurent with some pros because if you don't play Saint Laurent with some pros, it's not going to go well.
Yeah.
The way the past couple of games haven't gone well without pros, right? They didn't have any pros yesterday versus FC Laval, and they took 3. They didn't have any pros the week before versus MRO, and they took 2. And the only other game that they didn't have pros for was the first game of the season, I believe, versus St. Hubert, and they won 1-0 on a goal scored by their midfielder. But so if pros don't play, they don't usually score goals.
Right.
And they don't usually win games. And CS St. Laurent is the best team in the league. So you would think that some players are going to stick behind and play with their reserves on the weekend.
What I would do is maybe travel everyone to DC and then make some choices on Thursday and send a few guys back home to prepare for that game. I think that would be the logical move.
I would think the logical move were to be to keep some guys behind and make them practice with the reserves all week leading up to the game.
Yeah, could be, unless you have some injuries in DC and then you need to make some changes. But we'll see. We'll see, because I'm telling you, Saturday against Philadelphia, we might see some players that we just didn't expect to see there, and that's okay. That's normal. That's part of the equation also.
Jeremy, thanks for doing this. You can catch Jeremy Filosa, JF Dos Santos, and Gavino Di Falco on EMFC Radio. Jeremy's also with 98.5. I'm Marinaro. This is the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can check us out on Twitter at SickPod, CFMTL. Ciao for now.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.